Pure sunlight. I am your sun, your golden star. Even from 93 million miles away, I warm your land, your seas, your air, and chase the seconds from your days. My energy gives light and life to your tiny earth. Yes! Living things, including you, need energy to stay alive and grow. But you also use energy to heat your houses, to cook your food, to move your cars and trains and ocean ships, to run your computers and machines. Where does the energy come from? Where does that energy come from? Most of it comes from coal and oil and gas, called fossil fuels. What makes them fossils?
Like dinosaurs.
Like dinosaurs. They are ancient life that was buried deep underground. But fossil fuels are ancient plants. They captured light and shined on Earth millions of years ago. All this time, those fossil plants have kept my sunlight energy locked inside themselves. When you burn fossil fuels, you free the energy locked inside those ancient plants and turn it into heat and light. But how did those plants catch my sunlight energy and lock it into themselves? Burning coal. This is what happens. Green plants everywhere catch my light and use it to pull in carbon dioxide, CO2, from the air. They use my sunlight energy to build chains of carbon sugar that form the leaves and stems and fruit. And as they photosynthesize, these same green plants release oxygen, O2, into the air you breathe. What happens then? You gobble up the plants. You eat their carbon chains. You breathe in the oxygen. The plants breathe out. The plants breathe out. You use it to break the chains and take their energy. So you can move and live and grow. This is the cycle of life. The cycle of life is almost in perfect balance. All the plants together make a tiny bit more carbon chains than all the animals and the bacteria eat. And the plants breathe out a tiny bit more oxygen than the animals and the bacteria breathe in. The difference isn't much, but over millions and millions of years, a tiny bit each year can make a huge difference. In fact, these tiny differences gave you two of Earth's great treasures: all the oxygen you breathe, and the fossil fuels. Here's what happened. Billions of years ago, long before dinosaurs roamed the earth, there was no life on land. There was no oxygen in the air. None. Back then, the only life on Earth was tiny bacteria floating in the seas and tiny sea animals that ate them. Eventually, some of those tiny bacteria evolved into tiny green plants. They called my light. With carbon sugar chains. And they breathe oxygen out into the sea. Each year, they sent out another more oxygen than the tiny animals could breathe in. So, over millions and millions of years, the extra oxygen bubbled into the water, end up under the water, and they were rich with oxygen. Each year, the tiny plants made a few more carbon chains than the tiny sea animals could eat. So, over millions and millions of years, the extra carbon chains piled up on the ocean floor. Over millions and millions more years, bigger animals and plants evolved and moved into land. And like the tiny plants in the sea, the land plants made more carbon chains than the animals and bacteria on land could eat. Each year, those uneaten carbon chains that plants piled up as even more millions and millions of years passed. All those dead plants with my inside about under layers of dirt on the land and on the bottom of the sea. Buried deeper and deeper, they were squashed and changed into oil and coal and gas. Fossil fuels were ancient buried sunlight. Those fossil fuels lay deep in the earth for millions of years as new and different creatures evolved.
150. 100.
Some plants and animals became extinct, and more new ones evolved. But the cycle of life kept circling around. Eventually, just a few 100,000 years ago, you humans evolved and spread across the earth. You built fires to warm yourselves and to cook your food. And one day, you discovered fossil fuels were buried in sunlight. Very quickly, you began to burn those fossil fuels, the coal and oil and gas that took millions and millions of years for the cycle of life to make. Now you use my ancient sunlight energy to power your world. When you burn the fossil fuels, you break the carbon chains, pull oxygen from the air, and send out carbon dioxide, CO2. Every year, as more fossil fuels are burned, more CO2, more CO2 rises into Earth's air. Trees and plants and ocean waters pulling as much as they can, but it's not enough to keep CO2 from pulling up in the sky. Your scientists are measuring it. This CO2 is increasing faster and faster, and the humans are also cutting down forests and burning them to clear the land for growing food, putting even more CO2 in the air. So what? Some people say. So this CO2 is part of a blanket of gases around Earth. Much of that passes through the blanket and hits Earth. But much of the heat bears bounced back into space. Certain gases, like CO2, shape the heat and hold it. Shape the heat and hold it. This helps control Earth's temperature. When these gases are lost from the blanket, Earth cools. When they increase in the blanket, it warms. Putting fossil fuels and burning your forests but puts more CO2 into Earth's blanket every year. Every year! Earth traps more heat and warms the land and seas. The Earth has begun to feel these changes. Some Arctic ice and glaciers are melting. The seas are warming, and some are beginning to creep off the land. The warming causes fierce storms and droughts and floods all around the Earth. What is slightly different than it was in the recent past. Future. The changes will likely be more severe. Some people still ask, so what? Earth has changed a lot of the billions of years since it was born. It's been much warmer and much colder than it is today. Why not burn fossil fuels? Those people are possibly right. I, your son, have watched your planet warm and cool many times. Earth has been so cold that the ice-covered beaches where you go swimming today. Earth has been so warm that palm trees once grew where snow falls now. Cold and warm, your planet goes through these changes, and it always will. If it were not humans, but those changes will happen very, very slowly. On hundreds of thousands of years, the Earth's living creatures had time to adjust to the changing climate. But burning fossil fuels has brought huge quantities of CO2 into the air in just a few hundred years. This is very, 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 very fast. How many living creatures will be able to adjust to such rapid changes? How will it change the way humans live? Billions of tons of fossil fuels, materials, energy still locked deep inside the lost vaults of Earth. If you put them up, Earth's CO2 blanket will grow thicker and thicker. Your Earth will warm so much it will change in ways that no one can predict for sure. But it will change. When humans keep burning more and more fossil fuels every year, and the risk the changes this will bring, or will you work together to use my ancient that will high, find other sources of energy, and invent these ways to thin the blanket of CO2? The choice is yours.